We're live. Hey, Sandy. Hello, everyone. It is Friday, July 2nd. Long weekend here in Canada. So hopefully we still get some Canadians who didn't go up north and to their cottages or
And if you
lakes.
did, go for it. Have fun.
Yeah. Hopefully you're getting good weather because it's been a bit iffy. We've been on and off rain. But hi, Karen. Haven't
Hi,
seen you
Karen.
on here in ages. But today we're going to talk about betrayal and grief. And I think that's a big one we've all felt. And Sandy and I were just before we came on. I'm like, the last year and a half, if you've never felt it before and you're awake, you felt it that in this last year and a half. Some of us may have gotten through a lot of it, but there's probably going to be more coming, unfortunately, as this all continues to roll out.
As more truth comes up, we're going to feel more betrayal. And the idea is once we understand what it is, how it affects us, the intention behind it, sometimes we can process faster. But the idea is not to do a spiritual bypass and just skip over it and pretend it's not happening. The idea is to feel it, absorb it, understand what it is, and then move through it and get back on your life, get your life path back. That's the goal for processing any of these, right?
For everything. Processing any emotion, you can't hide, you can't shove it in a corner and compartmentalize because it'll always rear its ugly head. It'll always come back and bite you in the ass, right?
And it's not that it's biting you in the ass necessarily. It's trying to show you how to process through, but we haven't been shown how to do that for the most part. It's one of those secret recipes that only a certain science in our society has learned how to handle it. So you always have to go and get therapy or whatever. And we're hoping to debunk some of that and show people how to do it themselves, right? Hi, Noella. Hello, Teresa.
Hi, no, I was just about to say the same thing. Hi, Noella, and hi, Teresa. Thanks for everybody popping in here. Very exciting. And I was just showing Sandy this week. I got some new Oracle cards and I love them. I got the Moonology. Aren't these cool? But what did we pull for our chat today? The first one is, what do we need to release? And I guess with the topic, we need to release some grief and some betrayal feelings, right? And then the next one was, expect powerful change. And I think when we release these negative emotions, that's what we're going to get. You will see powerful change. We're in a really interesting time in history where change actually is happening faster. You know, the stuff you might have worked on 5 years ago and, struggled through it. If we really want the change, it's happening faster.
And it might come up again.
Going fast.
And it might come up again. A lot of people think if they've dealt with a suffering in the past that it's done. What's happening is the consciousness is changing within us. The planet frequency is changing with the Schumann resonance. Cosmic energies are coming in and magnetic energies are coming in, changing even our physiological body. But understand, we're just clearing it out on another dimension. We don't have to go into a meltdown and assume we did something wrong or we haven't fixed this yet. It's just coming to be cleansed on another layer. So we don't have to take it personally. No. But we can observe. And what I really want to chat about today too is on the individual level, the betrayal, but on the macro. So I want to kind of flirt between the betrayer and the betrayee and understand what behaviors are betrayal, cause betrayal and are betraying in nature, so that we understand if it's people around us who are doing it or if it's the greater, which we're seeing in these lockdowns, right?
Yeah. And we've seen so much in, I think, all aspects of that too, especially, this year and a half. Oh my God.
Hi, Dave.
It's been crazy. Hi, Dave. You're quicker though. Peeking over. Sandy, my eyeballs are right on you.
Right now. Comment. My comments are down today, so I'm just watching it.
Yeah, because Sandy can't comment, unfortunately. Not that we often do, because I don't want to detract from the conversation and concentrate on what Sandy's saying. But every once in a while, you never know. You can pop in there if we don't actually just say it on the live on air. And but go ahead, Sandy. I think that's a really great place to start. Is the different kinds of betrayal and how.
So I'm looking at what is betrayal. So Betty and I both work with emotion code, and although there's a lot of controversy around the human psyche and what it means to be holistic on the human scale, our emotions are a big part of this. because our emotions are what I believe allow us to reach the higher levels of consciousness, of love, of peace, of joy, enlightenment. And it's not a smooth ride, and it's not a destination. This journey is not a destination. But what happens when we look at the emotion code, betrayal registers in the heart meridian. Betrayal, abandonment, loss, love unreceived. Sometimes people feel like it's not taken for granted, but they feel that people aren't receiving their good intentions when they're trying to say, hey, wait a minute, like this is life and death stuff we're talking about. This isn't a choice between original ketchup and purple ketchup. Like this is big what's going on right now, but they're not necessarily seeing how significant the issues are. So the betrayal is an attack on the heart. When you look at betrayal, I'm looking at what is betrayal. Why does it hurt so much? It is treachery. It is deception. It is lies, whether intentional or not. It is the manipulation, whether it's direct manipulation on a person or it's somebody trying to triangulate and get somebody else to come in and say something to you. So you feel, well, I must be wrong because everybody's saying it. No, you're surrounded by asshats and they're all gossiping behind your back. That is also a collective form of betrayal. So understand that when anyone is not sincere and genuine with you, they're trying to manipulate, they're trying to get you to behave a certain way. It can be betrayal. And when we're looking at the information that's being presented regarding certain medical situations right now, it's bullshit 101. We all know that. That is a betrayal of the collective. So what else is betrayal? It's a betrayal of trust. I'm supposed to trust you. There's a saying, fool me once, shame on you. And then it was fool me twice, shame on me. I'm of the opinion at this point, there's no number two. Not going forward. Fool me once, it's a wrap. And when we start to understand this, we start to take our power back and not let other people, we don't let the tail wag our dog. We're the dog, they're the tail. We don't let them wag us and start directing us anymore. So this is so important that we understand just the depth and the scope and the pain that betrayal causes. And maybe we can ask for other people's opinions on this too, but people are telling me their partners, they're going to a social event and all of a sudden the people's house they're at start attacking the woman because the husband's had a few beers and gossiping about the wife, saying, you're not going to believe what my wife says. So they all gang pile up on her, which is gang stalking. And then she feels set up and betrayed by her husband. Guess what, dude? She's right. We've all got to take some responsibility in how this happens. I'm hearing many stories of parents, their children coming in and saying, putting them down and insulting them for the very essence of who they are. You're only a so-and-so mom. You don't have a university degree, mom, or whatever. These kind of comments are being said. And we all know some of the programming that's being introduced to us, like a lot of the programming that I've read about in the Toronto Protocol, maybe that's something we can post as well. This was planned to turn the children against the parents because they want they want all the children to think the parents don't know what they're doing. You're just similar to the dumb immigrant philosophy of what they were trying to do with the sex ed curriculum and the parents were protesting. They just filmed the immigrants because they wanted to blame it on the dumb immigrants. They were smarter than the dumb immigrants. Now the mental health monkeys are coming out and saying they're going to teach the parents on how to be parents for the children. This is the narcissistic society we live in. How betraying is that to assume some asshat with a degree has more experience than you or has more say in how to raise your child? So there's going to be betrayal in the past that we're processing. We're going to see it come up in the present, and it's going to be in the future. And we're going to see more and more of this as the truth starts coming out. We're going to see more betrayal as the control freaks start to raise their ugly head, because they are going to get uglier. And they're going to, if I speak with more emphasis than you, does that make me right? This kind of nonsense, right? They speak with more conviction. That doesn't make them right. That doesn't make them more entitled. So we live in a very backstabbing, self-serving society as it is. And it was funny, I had someone over yesterday and we were talking about what percentage of Canadians, I only went with Canadians, are awake. And I tuned in energetically with all Canada, and I got 25% of Canadians are awake to the truth of what is happening. Then I asked what percentage have the guts and the courage and the tenacity and the heart to do the right thing. And I came up with 12%.
That's not surprising. And actually, you said something earlier, and I wanted to actually, because you said it was treacherous, and that's basically treason. And the funny thing is, earlier this week, I actually started singing this song. I made it up. I don't know. I was walking around the house, and it was about treason. And they're going down. But when you look at because this is treason of...
Betrayal of the heart.
yeah, it's a bit, because treason is a betrayal. And if you look at the definition, it's the betrayal of your allegiance towards one's own country or one's own self, one's own family. So that thing you talked about with the husband that was gossiping about the wife, and then everybody jumped on her. Well, that's treason, because
Yes.
that your little home is your country, let's say,
Yes.
right?
Totally.
And your nucleus, that's supposed to be the safe place. And for somebody to do that, it becomes, it says by committing a hostile act, and that is a hostile act, really. And so we are living in a time of not only treason within our governments, but treason within our homes. And that's basically all comes down to betrayal. But I mean, really, it's a criminal act. If you're doing it in a political way, it's if you think about it.
Yeah. And treason within ourselves, because when we don't trust ourselves and know who we are, we listen to other people, or we let other people, we share something expecting them to hold. It's like when you give your money to, okay, this is ironic, this metaphor, which when you give your money to the bank, you're under the impression that your money's going to be there. And then all of a sudden one day you find out it's not, and you found out, oh, they had created secret rules in their charter that they can take money out of your account when it suits them. And you start to understand that it's a betrayal because you trust somebody else. But as human beings, we're supposed to trust other people, but we have to learn first to trust ourselves, so then we know who to trust, what people for what. So we're going to flip back and forth between the micro and the macro on betrayal. And we're also going to flip, I think, between trusting ourselves and other people who've betrayed trust, so that we can just kind of break it down into all the little compartments. And then we can put it back together. Hopefully by the end, we can do this within the hour, right? And put it back together and stand taller in our own power. And I want to use an example of betrayal of the macro. I was speaking with somebody yesterday who has a friend who works in a local hospital in the COVID unit. Oh, this is beautiful, right?
Okay, I can't wait to hear this story.
This is okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about betrayal. It's okay to be upset and stay relatively centered. We can be mad, but it doesn't give us the right to do a drive-by on some of these people. We have to understand just how absolutely insane these people are. So this woman was in charge of the COVID unit, and it turns out all the people who are getting sick and getting symptomatic are the ones in her staff who have had the job. 85% have had it. I can't remember what percentages she said, in the 30% are having adverse reactions. She has a daughter who works at the hospital in summertime. I don't know what, as the intern, and she's in the COVID unit. She gets paid $1,200 a month to keep her mouth shut. She has a husband who works in this hospital in the engineering department. I think he fixes the boilers and what have you. Guess what? He gets $1,200 a month to keep her mouth shut. This woman said to my friend, "You wouldn't believe the bonuses they give us to keep quiet." And then she has the nerve to turn around and say, "I don't know why Canadians aren't standing up."
Because that's why, what was it?
Betrayal.
6 weeks ago, the nurses were picketing in front of and had a rally in front of their association because of the gag order that's put on them.
But they didn't mind taking the bribe.
Well, some are fighting it. I guess they didn't.
The COVID department, if you're working in the COVID department, this woman is saying everybody is getting bonus to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah, not surprising.
I'm going secondhand. What I'm saying, Betty, it doesn't mean everybody's bad in any walk of life. I'm not saying every psychotherapist is bad, every scientist is bad, every academic is bad, but there's enough of them out there who will sell their soul for money.
Yeah.
But
too many.
Suppose this one goes to the rallies, but she's getting the bribes. It's like, where do you stand for? So
Nothing.
This is a betrayal of us, because then it's all ties into the media lies and just, pass the buck down the line, right? But it's just absolutely insane that she said, "You wouldn't believe how much money I got to keep just to go along with it." But she wouldn't disclose. My friend didn't ask her how much. But she said some of the doctors are getting $5,500 a month to keep giving the jabs. That's why they got a funny look in their face when they give it to you. But they didn't tell you, "I'm getting $5,500 to give this to you." So if I have a funny look in my face, it's not because I love you or care about you. I'm deciding if I can hurt you in order to get $60,000, $66,000 a year.
Well, isn't that the biggest thing we need to change? Is this I only take care of me mentality and my little nucleus, and not looking at how it affects. I mean, unfortunately, this is going to affect them as well on a grand scale at the end of the day.
They're getting the job. These are the ones they're going to be the ones who end up, I'm going to say, suffering the adverse effects first. So the medical system is going to fall, I think. And I agree with you, Betty, but I think there's a way that nature is going to cull her own herd.
Oh, we're also, I think we're going to be seeing the Nuremberg 2.0. And guess what? Those people who are taking the bribes are going to be lined up there, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be all of them or not, but what I like about what we're saying, I like the fact that if this is happening in one COVID unit in one hospital, so they've locked our area, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge down because there's so many COVID patients at this one hospital that they're going to start moving these COVID patients to the hospital in my community. So now you're going to affect my community with the people who got the vaccination or the V? Like, you know, you stop and just think, you've got to be a psychopath to think this way. You got to be really messed up or really dedicated to the truth to be able to follow the psychopathy of psychopaths, to understand how they operate.
Yes.
So these are all betrayals on various levels. That's a betrayal of humanity.
100%. 100%. And we're seeing it every day. We're seeing it in so many ways every day.
Yeah.
Like it's literally every day. And so those of us, you know, Sandy and I were talking about this before, those of us who are awake and aware right now, we're the ones who actually have had to face this betrayal and the grief of loss. And I know, I don't think Deb is on today, but she mentioned, you know, her husband fell asleep on Wednesday's chat with Patty. And then he went back to work and fell right back asleep and now is giving her grief. It's funny how you use that word. He's given her grief.
You know what? That's
about, you know, things he knows, but he had to go back to the 3D thinking to be able to function. And it's this ongoing betrayal we're getting and this ongoing grief. And I'm sure like that is incredibly difficult. I think we've all seen it with our friends and family. It's like I don't know. It's like a knife in the heart and a knife in the back at the same time.
At the same time. Yeah,
at the same time.
So can we talk about how we're not going to be going into linear solutions going forward? So we're looking at everything because we've been trained to be linear and one step leads to another step, one step in front of another. So I'm going to put this out for people who are experiencing partners who've gone back into the 3D. When the truth hits and these people wake up for the second time, they might be the ones who bring the sleepers who haven't woken up yet because we're still going to move beyond, and they'll be the ones saying, you know, I heard this once, didn't believe it, went back to sleep, and they're going to lead the next group up because they are going to be closer aligned energetically to that group. You
know, and I don't think it's not that they don't believe it. I think that they just can't hold that thought and function within. They still believe it. They've just compartmentalized because it will come back. You can't know something and then not know it.
Look at the trauma-based mind control, the MK Ultra. That's what they say they do. They traumatize them and compartmentalize their minds. But this is going to be, it's almost going to be a reverse engineering of it. They're going to compartmentalize because this is abuse, what we're experiencing. And we've talked about what's going on. They lock you down. They tell you who you can see, when you can go out, how many people you can be around, how much money you can make, what you can do, where you can do it, who you can do it with. This is an abusive relationship. This is domestic violence 101, perpetrated by the so-called powers that be and the experts on the people who pay their salary. So that's like trying to take away the breadwinner in your family, but it's in a collective. The breadwinners pay the taxes that keep these asshats in business. I'm being nice when I call them asshats, by the way. They're heartless. There's nobody else. You couldn't do this unless you're heartless. And because you love your own and you can't expand your love to embrace everyone or allow for the significance of everyone equally, even if they're not in your circle, doesn't mean you're going to give of yourself to help everybody out there. But you still have to understand the significance of everybody. And they're not capable of doing that. I just love my own. I don't care about anybody else. And this is the psychopathy, right?
But that is how, and it's just recently, I had the experience. It's like, where somebody talked about exactly that. And it's like, well, as long as my family's okay, I don't care what's going on. And it's like, okay, you know what? I've never understood that mentality. And this isn't something new, even before all of this. I always try, and I actually attribute this to the feminine energy. It's, if my community is doing well, then my family is doing well. So you have to make sure everybody, you know, your community, this area, not just this home. This whole area has to be thriving for this my home to thrive. So we have to do everything in our power collectively, and it has to be collective. It's not one person being the savior, because no more saviors. You're your own savior. That's it. That's all. And we do need to rise up and start fighting these battles, whatever one you're called to.
Right. So when we're looking at community, it's okay to notice that consciously you want the best for all parties involved. You don't go knocking on everybody's door saying, I want the best for you. Here's a bag of dry pasta or something like that to make sure everybody's got the supplies they need. You can collectively put it out there that I want the best for all parties involved. I'm excited about the present and the future. I can't wait to see the new technologies that come out. So we can still pump up.
You're a little glitchy, Sandy. Sorry, you were just in and out a little bit there.
We can still pump up the collective without having to put ourselves physically in front of them. So, Betty, I love what you just said, because do you know what video? Do you remember what video you sent me? The one on 5 signs you're a Satanist. One was you only care about you and yours. So
exactly, that's exactly that. But you listen to people. Listen to people, and you can actually see that playing out. Even it's very subtle. In a very subtle way, that is their mentality. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes that's heartbreaking, because it's like, how are we going to evolve? How are we going to move forward? How are we going to get out of this shit?
You don't bring them with you, though. You
no, but you think about it it's like, it's everywhere. But you know what? It doesn't take a lot of people.
No, it doesn't. But let's go back to it's everywhere.
The world.
It's everywhere. So what's another word for I only care about myself? Materialism, the lowest level of vibration. You're still in your 3rd dimension, your first chakra, that you only care about physical things. So that's the other word for the Satanism, is the materialism of I've got more, so I'm more important than you.
Yeah. Well, in the comment you have, Mom, you don't have a degree, so your opinion doesn't count. That's like that whole, I think I've said it before, and I love this from Max Spears. And thank you you introduced me to Max Spears. I think I watched everything he's ever done in like a couple weeks. I just did a full immersion of Max and his messages, but it was, it might've been actually in his, it was one of his last ones. He was saying that when you talk about intellect, right? And the different levels, the lowest of knowledge is actually that intellect. That book knowledge is actually the lowest form. It's actually when you know yourself, that the spiritual is knowing over book knowing, which is indoctrination, is much higher.
Street smart versus book smart, right?
Even book smart is like the lowest common denominator as far as intelligence. That's what it was, intelligence.
Totally. But that's not what we're trained in our society. And this is the next layer of the web. So think of the web as the individuals on the planet. Then we get into the intellect. So we get into the different types of assumptions that the intellect, I have a degree, so I'm smarter than you. I have a master's. But what about your PhD? I said it was a master's.
Or people, I know people are like, well, I have a really high IQ. And it's like, well, you're still dumb as a stump. So what the hell is it doing for you? And that's what goes through my mind, because you're lining up for all the shit that they're doing and thinking it's a really good idea. Yay. Okay. Well, that's really brilliant. Did you look anything up? Did you do any research? Did you, with all of your intellect or your intelligence, that your assumed intelligence?
But let's look at this. They are doing the research, but the problem is they're taught to look for information through different channels than us who are looking for truth on an independent level. So they'll tell you to do the research and not understand why you didn't read the book that they have prescribed. And you read the book and you think, there was one, relational trauma. I can't remember who wrote it. And I'm reading this book and I'm thinking catching my head in the car door 3 times would be less painful than trying to follow how intentionally complicated this is so that they can get their head around and remain the expert on relationships, because you can't possibly understand what they're talking about. I saw somebody on Twitter one time tell me he thought the psychotherapists were the narcissists. Andrew Samuels in the UK. If anybody knows him as a psychotherapist, he's flirting with the idea that it's the therapists who are the narcissists. Sandy being Sandy, didn't have a lot of filters then. No shit. And I start typing back. It's about time you figured this out, right? Next thing you know, the posts come down and then he tries to be a normal and the psychotherapist of worthy professionals again. It's like, go away. Nobody's more qualified to be us than us. And that we'll probably segue into this as we talk, right? But you were talking about grief. 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining. How many are bargaining right now? If I wear my mask and get the jab, I'll be able to go back to normal and you'll stop hurting me. Isn't that like domestic violence is even in that grief? Then it goes into depression and acceptance. So you're going to integrate the loss with your life and move on, but we're not going to integrate this loss. We're going to stand up and say, no, we don't tolerate your abuse. We don't tolerate your betrayal. We don't tolerate your abuse of power. And you're taking things that are not, we never gave you these powers. It's not that we fell asleep at the switch. We trusted you to do things. Can you imagine if we all have to be our own farmers, or we all have to be our own mechanics, or we all have to be our own air conditioning experts, or we all have to be our own cooks, or we all have to be our own bread makers? It's not possible. We need to be able to trust each other, that we have the integrity to create what we need that's in the highest and best good of all parties involved when it comes to the nutrition, the contents of whatever are being used, how it's grown. Is it grown with humanity and not the absolute butchering of another like soul to get it, so we are going to still need to build a community, but a lot of this comes back to learning how to trust yourself, because when you trust yourself, you'll know who's lying to you. You'll be able to ask for these abilities to come on, right?
Absolutely. And that's where we're going. And I think a lot of us, especially, I know everybody here, we're all getting to that point where you have your BS detector is on high alert, and it's really well tuned at this point. And I know that I can tell just from the comments on a regular basis. It's, you guys are like, you're nailing it. But we also, I know I'm still dealing with, some betrayals and some grief and the loss of some people. Some I've already dealt with, some are new. It's just
as we go.
It's a continuing cycle, because, and especially as things open up more and you're seeing more people, I had friends over yesterday, I was telling you, and they popped over, and my husband asked me, like, okay, we called me afterwards. Do you think they got vaccinated? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Time to ask.
Oh yeah, 100%. I like, there was no hugging. I was like as far away as possible the whole time, because I was just trying to take care of me. I love these people, but it's like, and it makes me sad. There is a grief, because I know I'm eventually going to lose them in my life on some level, likely. Unless I can convince them to get some, tea, white pine tea or something.
And we are convinced that's going to, I know we're not going to go into that today, but we're not sure what's going to work, right? We do the best we can, and understand that the placebo is 70% of what we think is going on.
Yeah.
So there could be other explanations for what we're seeing. Betty, we haven't talked about this. This just came to me late last night. I had thunderstorms like 3 times last night. And I'm like, why don't you want me to sleep tonight? And I'm like, who cares? I'll sleep when I can. Who says I have to get 8 solid hours of one night? I don't care anymore, right? Like I just, but I started looking at some other things, and it's coming up, and I'm like, okay, so there's the man-made manipulation that's coming through in the form of a medical situation and remedy that we're dealing with, but there's also natural stuff coming through. So now I have to look and I have to contrast the two of them to get a better understanding of the new information coming in. I know that's really cryptic. I don't even know what I'm going to go with it.
And the reason I actually think that that's one of probably the better ones is because Judy Mikovits actually said that they don't create anything without an antidote, and the antidote is actually derived from the pine needles.
Okay.
It wasn't just anybody. It was actually Judy Mikovits that said that. So that's why I give it more credence than Joe Blow on his, like me, okay, saying this is what it is, blah, blah, blah.
That's interesting. Because I think there's a natural remedy for all this too. Even I think there's a natural remedies within this. I'm not going to be the one who comes up with it. I'm not trained, and two, I don't care. There's somebody else. That's not my role this lifetime. That's somebody else's role. But it's interesting to look. I think we're going to find more solutions as more information comes forth. Because a lot of people think it's all done. It's a wrap. You've done it. You're going to be on the planet. You're done, right? I'm not pie in the sky about it, but I'm not 100% convinced that's our only option.
No, but there is going to be a high proportion, I believe, that because they are going down the 1 and 2s and, times. And the more often you do it, the more likely you're going to have a problem. And then if you're so sound asleep that you think this is a good idea, you're not going to be looking for the natural solutions to it either until it might be too late. Depends on how long between your last one to when you're ready to see the truth. Do you know what I mean? So how much damage has it already done? Because sometimes we can go too far in the damage and you can't reverse it.
Yes. And I'm not saying don't protect yourself now and keep your distance. By all means, do what you think is right to protect yourself. It's interesting. The same person I was speaking with yesterday told me that she went to a local health food store. I'm not going to say what it is. I'm not looking to draw attention to the people. And she said, people are coming in, customers are coming in and asking for the natural cures. And they're like, we don't know of any. And so the health food stores do not have the information to help the people who are suffering from symptoms of what is coming on now. So
I'm going to be honest.
Solutions, but they're going to the same 3D roots.
But a lot of them, even if they did know, they're not allowed to say.
Yeah. But there's the bribe kind of thing again, right?
They're not allowed to say. So yes, absolutely. I think some of them are being bribed to be quiet if they actually have any knowledge. Because let's be real, you go to the health food store, sometimes it's just, the kid there that's got a part-time job.
Right.
Bringing you in. So they don't necessarily know a lot about natural remedies. But yeah, there's definitely some suppression. I know a friend of mine was looking for it because you can actually buy the tea. Can't find it anywhere. It's all sold out everywhere. And then Jack says there's an interesting coincidence that there's a weevil right now destroying the white pine population in southwestern Ontario. But
that's not a surprise, is it? And also the trees give us so much oxygen, and they're really trying to reduce the trees in that in this area as more construction comes in and more subdivisions come in, right?
Yeah.
So Karen's also made a comment here. So this is good to know. And we're saying everybody trust yourself. So if Judy's talking about a certain drug, but go to whatever's natural, the essential oils, like you look at all of them, cypress, eucalyptus, pine, balsam fir, what's the other one? Black spruce, like they all have different frequencies, but when we go right to the natural products.
Ceramin is actually made from, it's a synthetic made from the pine. So I actually looked up how it was made. So it is the white pine. It's just you probably can't get a prescription for that. That's the thing. So you want to find the natural. It's just a synthetic. All drugs are synthetic forms of something natural.
Right. So that's what I think maybe her point is, that go as natural as you can, whenever you can. Right. Which is the essential oils. It's funny. I tried to order some essential oils this week, and there's one I absolutely love, and it said it's out of stock. So I had to go to another company to get it. It doesn't say when it's coming back in stock. It wasn't one of these necessarily, but it's just, you just wonder how long it's going to take before some of these natural remedies aren't going to be available either. Right.
Yeah. And Nolena says, I think we have to accept what happens to even our loved ones. And you're right. And it's going through the journey of grief, because our loved ones, guess what? We're going to feel the grief of their loss, either physical loss or just emotional separation and not being able to be with them because of our differing opinions on things. And that's the loss and the grief. Because somebody doesn't have to die for you to grieve their loss.
And are they going to be lost in the past, as in totally physically lost? Is it going to be a relationship loss in the present? Is it going to be an expectation that I can't be with them in the future? It's kind of what you're saying, right, Betty? Right along the whole spectrum. So grief doesn't have to be static, and it's not going to be static. And it's interesting. The lungs are the organ that process grief, that grief is associated with. So, and also when you look at wearing a mask, that's designed to suppress the lungs and let the natural moisture out and all your bacteria out. So it's kind of funny how it's all connected in so many levels. And the key is always coming back to ourselves, right? Coming back, being our best self, our highest self. What do we need? Trusting ourselves.
Well, your breath is also your life. Right?
And life force, yeah.
Yeah, I think I said quite a while ago that, what's the first thing you do when you're born? You take a breath. What's the last thing you do when you die? I mean, and I've heard people say, oh, you know what? Actually, it was just the other day I was walking the dog, and somebody was telling me their mom just passed, and she was there and she was with her, and she thought she was sleeping. She just took a big breath and fell asleep, and she thought she went to sleep, but she was gone. It's that one last and the first
yeah.
As part of who we are, it's part of our essence.
It's going to be sad if people pass at home and then the system is so inundated that how do you find someone to come and take them through what we would call the normal channels? You might be burying them physically yourself too. Like there's going to be, who knows what's going to happen. And we don't want to go down that path, but we're at the same time, we're not delusional to assume it's not a possibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And well, all even natural things have side effects. I've taken stuff and then broke it out in hives from
You
a
know,
natural product. It just wasn't working for me.
yeah, we
But
have to
you
know
have to
what
be careful. You have to be careful of everything. Just because something is natural isn't necessarily good for you. Poison ivy is natural, but you don't want to roll around in it either, do you?
And when we look at that, we know how to trust ourselves. We know what we're going to be drawn to and what we're not going to be drawn to. And this is the big part of trusting ourselves going forward. The other thing about betrayal, what it is, it's promises broken.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're going to 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Really? That's a promise. It's all we're going to need. Right? So you look at all the lies that we're experiencing right now on so many levels. We don't need a mask. We need a mask. We don't need a mask. You need 3 masks. We don't need a mask.
Yeah.
One person says you need a mask, the next person says you don't. And but the masks are metaphorical. We have one physically on our face, but what about the mask you're wearing to hide your personality and your intentions?
Well, that is the ego. Patty and I talked about last week. It's your persona. It's that face you put to the world. But now they won't even cover that. They want to actually create yet another persona of being a slave.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. So we have so many choices to make, right? There's no doubt about that. But we look at all the different ways that we're being betrayed in humanity. We're being betrayed by Health Canada, who says now they've lowered the percentage of grains that go on your plate, but they have yet to say that a certain pesticide is a carcinogen. They won't admit that it's cancerous. So that's a betrayal. So all the people who work there, you're getting paid by the people to lie to us. So at what point do we start loving ourselves enough, not trusting you, and saying, we're not paying you anymore?
Yeah.
We don't need you. You no longer serve a purpose, and let them go and repurpose their lives.
Yes. Well, it's funny because lots of things are happening. I don't know if you noticed, but just before we came on, I don't know if you heard, but Catherine McKinney isn't going to be running for office again.
Of course not. But this is called the polypetal shuffle. Let's look at what this means. So she's done enough harm. So she says, oh, I'm resigning. So why don't we pull a Matt Hancock and let her have an affair in a closet? And then we all cry, outrage. But you can't stop the child sex rings that are going on. But you can find Matt Hancock in a closet groping his whoever she was, some billionaire woman. So I call it the polypetal shuffle. So she goes to the back now for like 6 months, maybe a year, and then comes back again. Look at Peter MacKay. Was he not the justice minister? And then he goes and retires with his pensions. And then he comes back and decides he's going to run for prime minister. But it was the people who said, you're not coming back in again. So they put him back to the backbench and he'll come back again. Look at John Tory, the mayor of Toronto. He tried to come out as running for Ontario, came up with some policies people didn't like. They pushed him aside. Then they retool him. He comes out. Now he's running for the mayor of Toronto and he gets it. And he's leading the sanctuary cities. So we have to understand they rotate the politicians out as fast as they do the pedophilic priest, put him in another parishioner, put him in another congregation, and then they start all over again. So this is why we need to see these dogs.
I know, but I think it might be a sign that things are changing and people are resigning and leaving. It may be a good thing that she's no longer going to be running for a federal office anymore. Is all I'm saying. We are seeing more and more resignations and people stepping away. And why is that?
So who's to say that people aren't?
I'm actually trying to look at it from a very positive perspective instead of this.
There's no right.
I think there is.
There's no right or wrong to positive or negative. Who's to say the person who's going to replace her isn't capable of more evil? We are in this for a couple of years and we have to watch the intentions of everybody. And I'm not saying I want to look for the darkness. I don't see the darkness. I see the light coming. I see how these weasels play their game. So the weevil came into Ontario. The weasels are already in Ontario in certain government positions, right? Absolutely. I understand the game, but we have to learn how the machine they use to perpetuate the violence. So they take somebody else and put somebody out and put another person in who's willing to punt the abuse down the line a little more. Look at Boris, what's his name? Johnson. They all thought he was going to be the savior. Turns out he's doing worse than the person before him. Who are they going to bring in next? And they're going to put the next nail in the coffin is their plan, but it doesn't mean we're going to follow it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and the reason I actually brought it up is because there is a pattern happening in Canada of these resignations. We have never, as far as I know, in our history, gone this long without a governor general. One goes out, another one is popped right back in. We've gone, at least 2 months, maybe 3 now. I don't know. Time is going so quickly. why don't we have one?
And I don't have the
Why
answer.
is this?
It's okay to
Why
watch.
is it feels like it's falling apart, like these.
It's okay to watch what's going on as they hang on. So I don't think we have to have one common view on this. So I'll use an example. JT is pedophilic. We know that he put the boy lover logos all over the trust fund or foundation. He came up for his father. We know that. So they're going to rotate him out because his approval rating is so low. Who are they looking to bring in for the next Liberal? Mark Carney, who was the head of the governor of first of Canada and then the governor of England, the Bank of England. And now he's going to come back. Who do you think is smarter and can do more damage? JT, everybody's little drama teacher who made it big and became the prime minister, or somebody who knows the money game? So we're not out of the woods yet, is all I'm saying. We're not out of the woods yet. So we watch as we bring in what we want.
What we want. Absolutely. But I mean, I think I like to think of it as maybe possibly wins. These might be wins. And you know what? JT is in there because he's a good little puppet and a good little soldier, and he's too stupid to question anything. He just does what they tell him.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see that, but it doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It's just my opinion. Teresa's saying a lot of this is just a distraction to what's going on. You don't lose the ball, right? That's my opinion. But it doesn't mean that I'm not hopeful. And I want to finish. When we finished up, I want to talk about the good and how to trust ourselves more and stay aligned. Because as we see their games, we grow higher in our abilities. So it's okay to take a moment. The problem with verbal communication, it takes so long for us to get the messages out, whether it's 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 10 hours. But it doesn't mean that we don't keep growing behind the scenes as we see all this happening. So it's kind of like an update. Where are we? What do we see? Where are we going? And then when we finish up, we put suggestions out that people can put in practice for the week so we stay growing while they play their games.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it is don't take it personally.
Totally. So
don't take it personally.
So what?
Because we have, I think, I mean, I know that part of the grief and that, I'm finding out everything was a lie and blah, blah, blah. You take it personally. Like I was personally betrayed, but we were betrayed as a collective. And then instead of feeling like a betrayal, it's like, okay, now I got more to learn. And it's exciting to learn. I'm going to be honest. I love learning and it's a lot of fun, especially if you find interesting ways. It's not like book learning. We learn from each other.
Totally.
Like this. And, Nick just had Alex Collier on who
great
wealth of I know it was a really good interview.
So I'm going to put this
learning from different people and different things. And it's exciting. And then just let the other, if you feel it, then feel it and let it go. But remember, it's not personal. It's not about you personally. A lot of it.
And it's not about about us personally because they're trying to hurt all of us. But I did interviews with Miles Johnson, I think starting in 2018. And I think 2019, maybe beginning of 2020, he made a comment about how bad things are going to get. And I'm like, so what, Miles? They're trying to kill us. Who cares? They've been doing it for decades. The only difference is now we know. So everybody goes through and realizes different stages of grief, and we've all processed different things. One is not more important than the people who are waking up now. And we say, okay, you might hit skid row on the grief gravy train a little harder than others because you're getting it all at once, but it doesn't mean other people haven't seen it, not right or wrong. We're all here to learn something and be able to process this so we can come to a higher place. We all see it at different places. I went into the optimistic mode. He went into the more upset about what's happening, but UK is getting hit harder than us. So I understand his processes. He might have to dig down a little deeper and dig his heels in deeper before they start to come out. There's no right or wrong way to looking at any of this other than we know they're trying to kill us. So what? Now we know the how, we know the who, we know the why. They're psychopaths and they want everything we have. We know nothing's going to stop them but us. Thanks to Alex Collier and all kinds of people, even people here, all of us, we know how powerful we are if we put this into play. But we have to understand betrayal, they intentionally go one in the heart and one in the back of the heart. They hit you from different sides to try to knock us down. And it's not going to work, even though it's going to hurt. That's my point, right? So that we see that it's just a process, and you clear out one betrayal, and then we're going to find out something we're going to find out even more things than we thought we knew, and it's going to hurt us again. How do we go in and process the pain in our hearts and still maintain our humanity and not want revenge? Do we want justice? For many people, yes, and I agree. We want accountability, of course, but how do we do this and still maintain our heart center?
Yes. Okay,
right?
I have to tell this story because yesterday we were talking about the residential schools and the fun because they've been around since 18 something, right? And they just closed in 1995. And the funny thing is one of my friends said, "Oh, well, a lot of that stuff happened like long time ago." And I'm like, his wife and I were looking at each other. It's like, they just closed in 1995, right? There are still, I'm sure that wasn't happening. I'm like, really? So you think, I actually went through this whole thing. You think we're civilized now and we wouldn't actually do harm to children because what? Because we have nice homes, you got nice clothes, you got good shoes, you got an iPhone, you got an iPad, you got a computer. So all your stuff makes you more civilized. Is that it? No, it doesn't.
Great way to look at it.
Fucking thing about how civilized humanity is. We just have nice stuff. We're dumb as stumps, and we've actually gone backwards instead of forwards over the last 100 years. And that is the
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we've become dumber and sleepier, and all done on purpose. This is not they have done this to us. Yes, but the last 100 years we actually regressed, not progressed. But then they gave us our fancy little shiny objects that tell us, look how advanced civilization we are. We're so evolved. Oh, I'm not. Come on. And he just looked at me like, oh, and his wife's like, yep, she's right. Yeah, she's right. There's still people accountable.
They need to be held accountable, right? But let's look at this interesting ways. So I agree with that they say, well, it happened in the past. That's our history. That's part of the programming. But it's not. It's part of the process that we're in. It's not. It's part of the destroying other people and taking their blood and taking and the demise of certain people in society so others can benefit. So it's just part of a process. So when you look at a train, you look at the engine, you look at the caboose, all the cars in between, you can say, well, but that was the past. It went through right after the engine. That technically was the past, but it's not, because it's still part of the same train that's coming through that is called the dark side of how they try to maintain power over others. So it's not the past. So I'm going to use the exact same analogy, but in a different argument. Let's look at present it differently. So we look at the racist card, race theory. Look what the white people did. Really? 60,000 children are missing every year in Canada. It's estimated 800,000 in the United States. Do we really care what color these children are, or do we need to stop this? So we stop all the slavery. So they all use the past as a justification for wagging the dog of the present. And I'm like, no. What's more important? Your past from 200 years that may or may not be true, depending on what Victor wrote the history book, or what's happening right now. So we can, what I love about what we're discussing here, Betty, either way, we've got them. You want to say it?
Oh, yeah, because
bullshit.
And how can you say, and this is what really irritates the shit out of me. It's like, oh, well, it happened 100 years ago. So, just sweep it under the rug. Well, it's still happening today because they got away with it 100 years ago. Who's to say they're not going to continue doing it because they've been continuing to get away with it? Maybe they're doing it in a different way, not in the schools. But they're still doing it. They're snatching them off the streets and they're farming them underground. They're doing it all kinds of ways. You know what? And we need it to stop, and we need to hold every single one of them accountable. And even if it's from 100 years ago and they're no longer on this earth plane, we need to know their names. We need to know what they did. And then because their history of being this wonderful person, which is what they usually do, they hold them up as like, of
course,
a hero.
Society.
You're going to take these pedestals out from under them and make them the shitheads they are.
So anybody who has to go, look at me, I'm here to save you, I'm here to do wonderful things. Usually that's when you look under the hood and you realize if they need that amount of attention, there's something that's probably wrong, right?
Yes. And I love that, Jay Van. We have to process the grief together. And a lot of things,
that's what today is about.
Yes. And this conversation actually helps process grief.
Totally.
We're processing it as we talk about it. And as you guys are talking about it in the chat, we're clearing it as we talk and making it, being aware of it. When we put it in front of us, we can actually then deal with it.
Yes. Right. And this is so important. So how do we stop betrayal going forward? We're also going to bite this. So let's look at betrayal as a multi-headed being. How do we stop betrayal going forward? Stop trusting untrustworthy people. So as we're saying, if anybody's saying, look at me, I'm here to save you, chances are they have an agenda that's not in your best interest. Know you are deserving of fantastic things in your life, including respect. We all are. This is so disrespectful to betray us the way they are and assume they can step all over our hearts, step all over our rights, step all over our dreams, our passions, what inspires us.
And our bodies, they're actually literally stepping
And
all
even
over our
that,
bodies.
right? The temples, right?
Yeah.
So learn to trust yourself so you can spot the ill intentions of others. Learn to practice healthy boundaries. Know when to say, step off, Jack. And we have the right to say that. And one of the natural laws ties in somehow to do no harm. I can tell somebody to step off knowing I'm not causing any harm with what I'm doing. And if they say, well, you're breathing, you're taking my oxygen. No.
There's enough for all of us.
That kind of thing, right? Be willing to walk away from unhealthy people who want to take from you.
Yep.
When you kind of put your hands up like this isn't surrender. This is back off. This is a boundary. Back off. We're not buying into this. Mark Carney wants to come into Canada. Well, I think our first question for Mark Carney should be, have you ever had sex with a child to get promoted? Whoa, we can blast that all over social media as one-offs, especially the people who don't have big followings. You can hashtag it and get it out there and start asking these questions and plant the seed. How did you get promoted, Mark Carney? Yeah, you're kind of good looking. And well, JT was good looking and some people voted for him because of that. But like, what exactly are you going to do for us, Mark Carney? Explain this, how this works. So we're going to start getting ahead of it too, right? By willing to walk away from unhealthy behavior and challenge it. Don't go into relationships with these people in the first place. Is kind of saying that. If it seems too good to be true,
it likely is.
Stop trusting that others know what's best for you. Trust in yourself, because these are key points going forward, because as we're watching all the games and the manipulations, we can see how we react to them. Do we overreact? Do we get angry? Do we sit and watch them and say, yeah, back at you, sister or mister or whatever it is, and understand how we're getting played and how they manipulate our energy? Because right now, if they're planning a big false flag this weekend, maybe they are and maybe they aren't. If we react, we feed we're the loosh for the dark energies. I wonder if we could spike it up to if we see something nefarious being planned, turn around and say, we're calling the deep state out no matter what. You are done. We don't buy into the drama of the flag. We change the narrative and raise the frequency toward truth and justice and what we want to see happen. So we don't, if somebody tells you green, you say pink. Somebody tells you purple, you say orange. Somebody tells you red, you say violet. So whatever they tell you it is, we change the energy consciously about what we want this to be about as we grow into what we want. So this is how you don't play the game energetically.
And I love that you said, because this is how we, I think one of our very first shows is about trusting yourself. Who do you trust? You got to trust yourself first. Oh. When you put your trust in someone else, that's how a lot of people are going down there, because they're trusting somebody else's opinion instead of their own body. They have questions. They're not sure about it, but they still line up and go get it. Now, that's not trusting yourself. And it doesn't matter that you're not following the herd. Well, guess what? They're all lemmings jumping off a cliff. You can be walking the other way into the sunshine and into the new world that is going to be without all this bullshit. And that's, when we trust and we go within and we deal with all this shit that we need to deal with. And it makes it easier too when we realize that what other people are doing is more about them than yourself. And it actually helps ease that betrayal, because it's got nothing to do with you. This is all about them. And I take the book, The Four Agreements, right? And he talks a lot about that. It's such a fantastic little book. I go back to it many times, because it's, don't take anything personally, because everything, basically, anything anybody's spewing at you is more about them. It's all about themselves and nothing about you. Most times, right? Sure, people will, we're none of us are perfect. Let's be real. And we might spur somebody on to say something about us that might be a mirror to tell us, oh, this is something.
But they're assuming everybody's dysfunctional in that book. He doesn't show the intentions of some people are evil. So they're directing it at you to get you to behave a certain way. So he's under the assumption in that book that everybody's the same, that we're all just on the same plane trying to find our way. And some aren't. Some have such an evil intention. They are directing it at you, spewing it at you, and called black magic. So we just understand there's a whole scale.
Absolutely.
In that concept, right?
Well, it's a New Age book, and let's be real. New Age doesn't talk about evil. Evil doesn't exist except in your own mind. Blah, 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 blah.
He's got great points in his book, though, too. That being said, he's got great points in his book, as you're saying.
Yes, and there is truth in so much of what they tell us. They just either they skew the facts, like there is no evil. Well, you know what? What's going on right now tells me there is a hell of a lot of evil, and it is not in my own mind. And I did not create this.
Right. So we see
I would not have even imagined creating this. So that blows their theory right out of the water, right? And we create our own the bad things that happen. I'm like, I didn't create this shit.
We didn't. No, we didn't.
Did you, Sandy? Did you guys? No, I don't think so. We did not make this. This was the evil ones.
We played our role because we trusted you, and that's okay. We realize our mistake. We're going to own our responsibility now. We're going to own the mistake we made of trusting you when you're untrustworthy, and we allowed you to betray us, but we're not going to allow you to betray us again. You're going to try, and you might hurt our hearts because we're going to realize the length of evil you've gone to, but you're going to own this shit, not us. Yep. How's that for firm?
Yeah. And it's all about creating those boundaries too for ourselves while we heal, because we're going to be in a healing process for quite a while. There's a lot more that's going to come down, you know, so it's important to start to clear and create that space for more. And it does get, and I found it does you start to see a pattern, and it does get easier the longer you are down this road of healing, right? Sometimes the harder things are to get rid of later as you learn how to heal it. So maybe something more traumatic will come up, but you will be able to deal with it better today than you would have a year ago.
Because you have the skills.
That's why it waited to pop up now. Yeah. And so don't feel bad. And you know, so it could be an old grief, an old betrayal. Betrayal is a big one. We have been betrayed since birth. Really?
If not before that, generational in the womb. It's ancestral, long time.
Yeah, we've got so much of this betrayal and grief. I think is the biggest one we need to start to clear. And it will, as we do that too, it actually opens up our heart more, and we can actually live from that love space easier when we release the grief, because you stop the blockages.
And I know clearing people, when I started out tapping, even myself, there's times things came up and I'm out of here. I'm out of here. And if you're with the right practitioner, I remember one woman saying, stay with it, Sandy, stay with it. Don't leave, don't leave. And we were online, and I'm like, I'm out of here. And when I processed it, I'm like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And don't get me wrong, I went and slept. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I went and slept for an hour or two as my body processed this, whatever the grief was. And that's the funny thing about it. Once you process it, you don't remember the incident. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't have a charge anymore. It's like when you look back in your diaries, or you look back in papers you wrote something 4 years ago, and you think, oh my God, I forgot about that, because it's no longer has a charge. So the idea is that's how we understand these things. If it was significant, it would have stayed with me. Now what stays with me more is, what did I learn about the lesson about how to heal going forward even more, not the incident that at one time had stopped me in my tracks. And this, I'm saying this as an example for everyone to know, depending on what it is, it doesn't matter what it is. Once you learn to process this, you learn how to take the log jams out, and then another one comes up. You might sit with it for a day. You might sit with it for 2. If you're sitting in with it longer than that, you start talking to somebody, because you get yourself back in the game if you can't do it on your own, and you start processing and you go through. And I remember, I'll use the example when T-Man didn't get in November 3rd. I was just guffawed. I took about 8 hours off, came back, looked at what was going on online, and I posted on my thread, let's take the rest of the day off. We're back at it tomorrow. And everybody's just smashing the hearts. And it's like, yeah, right. Yeah, I've got nothing intelligent to say, and I can't imagine anybody else does right now. So I'm just going to go be by myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's okay to do that, right? So what does betrayal look like? Gossip, triangulation, singling out one person, shaming somebody, belittling another. You only have a college education, right? Singling somebody out for what you are. You're not very smart. What do you know? You're not a doctor. Oh, that's the measure of somebody, especially when you realize the bribes that are happening. There's no education that measures the integrity of a person. Belittling somebody for what they stand for. So this is where you go, oh, I know this game. Have I got my Teflon on? I got mirrors on the outside. I can deflect any kind of nonsense that comes my way. Yeah. And you realize we get stronger and stronger, right?
And then you don't let that betrayal hit you. The more we process it too, it's as we clear it and start to see it for what it is. And that is the kind of stuff that isn't personal. This is about them trying to elevate themselves by pushing you down. You just stand tall and go, whatever you want to believe.
You know
And
what's
actually, the funny thing is when you say, if that's how you want to look at it, go for it. And it didn't ruffle you, it actually will shock them. It will
hurt you, but you don't show it.
no, it will shock them, not me.
I know, but
they didn't.
it might land. It will hurt from
an
it.
effect because they do this for an
Effect,
effect.
so they can see if they can find a weakness, can get into your energy, right?
Poke your armor, see where
Totally.
the soft
That's
spots
how they
are.
get in. That's how they get into your energy. I was working with somebody a couple of weeks ago and some things had happened. It doesn't matter what. And she'd had a back brace on because she just went into a quasi tailspin over things that had happened in her life. And I stood beside her and I said, I want you to stand tall. And I walked her up her vertebrae. I climbed up 33. So hypnosis takes you down the numbers. I walked her up to 33 and I got up like where the top of her lumbar is and I could feel her snap. And she kind of went and she's standing taller and taller. She sat down, went like this, and you could hear something crack. And she goes, I just gave myself a chiropractic adjustment. I'm like, she did it. We facilitate. We all help each other. Even the people in the group who are sharing all of their ideas, we're all helping each other through this. But it's like, we've got this. Look at the sun shines when I know I'm over the target, right? The sun comes in here. But my point is that she could figure it out for herself. We just need to know how to share some of these ideas. So when the time comes, we don't need to take a week to go in to see somebody to figure this out. You know what I mean? That we can say, hey, how do I handle this? Well, there's different ways to look at this. Have you thought of this? What if we just sit tight and don't react? And then that's going to freak them out even more when we sit here and watch them play their red flags or false flags.
Yep.
Really.
And Diana says that her BS detector is on super high. And you know what? That's what we are learning is our BS detectors are.
Our truth detectors. Yeah.
Yeah. We have tuned them over this past year. And we're seeing through it. And that's why processing this stuff will become easier, especially when it's coming from an external, as long as we start to deal with all of our own insecurities, because they're trying to find your insecurity. So if you didn't go to university, is that your insecurity that you don't think you're smart enough because that's what the world has said? Or have you come to grips with the fact that, you know what, I'm actually really smart. It doesn't matter how many years I went into indoctrination school. It was actually a blessing I didn't, because I can see through their garbage.
Is that funny?
Now we flip it around. Is it that you're a director and I'm just the lowly, cleaner? Well, you know what?
How many bribes did you get?
How many bribes did he get? But how would he like coming to work if you didn't do your job?
Yeah, totally. We need everybody. And that is
everybody. Everybody is important. And I love what you said, actually. I think you said it on Nicholas, that when you worked in hospitality, the general manager, if he went away for a month, the place would still run. But if the dishwasher or the maid was gone, guess what? Everything falls apart. So who's the most important player on that team? Is it the guy at the top or is it the person at the bottom? Without that person at the bottom, nothing runs.
The structure. They take the floor out of everything. You take the foundation out of society, right? And I'm not saying everybody's going to aspire to be the maid or the dishwasher. My point is we all play a role. Absolutely. And if you're fortunate enough that maybe you're in that example, you're a wait staff, you can leave your job at home and still make great money and go and follow your dreams, but be able to pay your bills. So we look at things as we're changing into the spiritual realm of things and looking at, you and Patty had talked about how many businesses had closed. And I'm like, but look at the opportunities. There's new in direct marketing, whether you like it or not, there's new business opportunities that are opening up that deal with the spirituality. What about organic farming? Like there's so many things, indoor farming, changing the water systems. There's so much that can come up, but we still need to put food on our table as we transition. So it's still okay to make money as we flow through this.
But try to do it in an integral way, not by taking bribes to actually hurt people, because there is karma attached to that. So there is absolute karma attached to knowingly putting poison into somebody that
for
money.
So this is what's coming out. So if this is happening in one hospital, I'm going to say it's St. Mary's in Kitchener's, the one I'm told it's happened in. Mm-hmm. It's happening in all hospitals because they are not smart enough to create new things. They follow the same pattern because it works in 3 levels of government: federal, provincial, like state, and municipal or local government. It works the same everywhere. They created the system, which is the system. And that's why people all go along. So if they're being bribed in the medical community, in the COVID fields, are they being bribed? Where else are they being bribed? In the media, where else are they being bribed? So when we look at it, this is a false reality based on greed. But the greed is based on shallowness and not knowing who you are and standing for any values. So it's all coming, it's all being exposed from top to bottom. I love it.
Yes. And actually, I can't remember, was it Noletta or yeah, it was Noletta. Tears to help clearing now. Yes. And you know what? I know that Patty and I talked about laughing, and I told the embarrassing story about myself. And it was really funny. I was actually telling your girlfriend, I was like, I can't believe I told this online live. But hey, you know what? I have a body. It does what it does. Right. But laughter and tears is like the opposites. They're both very healing. It depends on where you are and what you need, right? Because tears actually are cleansing.
Cleansing, yeah.
Actually, it's almost as if you cry because of the grief and the fear, you're actually releasing it through the water coming out of you. That salt water is cleansing you from that pain. And so you can actually cry it all out and then move on. You can cry happy tears. You can actually laugh it out. Because it's that ha ha ha, that it's the actual type of breath you do that is actually the healing. That ha 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 of laughter. It's a very it's actually very cool, because there is some science behind why that actually heals.
Totally. And we're meant to laugh. We're meant to have more joy in our life. It's just not what we're experiencing right now, but we can still, I'm not saying act as if, but that's what that kind of is, acting as if you're laughing. And there's times you laugh at things that are just insane. And we weren't going to talk about this, but we're talking about the magnetics, and we're hearing airplanes are crashing. And just, there's more than that's a coincidence. And Betty and I are talking, we're putting this together just as we do. And the pilots, if they've taken the job and they've got magnetics in their hands, and now you think of putting magnets on the instrument panel when you're up there, and all of a sudden things are going funny. And Betty's sitting here sticking herself to the side of the airplane saying, can you imagine if the ones who got the injected are sticking to the sides of the airplane? Like
they're outside the plane sticking to it, and all the unjabbed can be inside in the seats. You can get twice as many people on a flight.
You know, we're laughing about this and it's hilarious, but it's not funny, but it's funny. But we're still having a fantastic laugh about just how outrageous this situation is.
I can just see these planes with people hanging on.
Sticking to the side because the magnets are pulling them to the side. And it's like, step aside. Oh, I can have an aisle seat if I want. Great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, you know, they don't have to worry about bathrooms because they're flying through the air. You can go and it'll dry you off at the same time.
But it's funny, but it's not. It's still tragic, right? At the same time, we didn't tell these people to do these things. We have to own our own stuff. But anyways,
super economy flying. It was so funny.
It is hilarious, right? But they're not funny things. But at the same time, have we lost our minds yet? Have we lost our minds with so many things that we do?
Gotta find the humor in the crazy that we live right now. And you know, on a serious note, Sandy mentioned that somebody she knows works out of a hangar, and I think they do private jets, right? They do some work on private jets, and they'd had 3 crashes just within a week
in their area within 3 weeks. And she said one she can believe in, 2 she's not believing in, 3 weeks. So now our plane's going to start falling from the sky. So I'm out for a walk the other day and I hear a plane overhead, and I turn just to make sure it's flying the other way.
It's not above me, but it's not coming down.
You know what I mean? It's not about being self-centered, but it's like, hey, one more thing to worry about. Now the things are going to start falling out of the sky. So maybe it's good that planes are landing or grounded for now, on the most part.
For the most part,
who doesn't, right?
I said to you, isn't it funny? Because those are short haul flights normally, right? They're all in like a small area. So the whole clot thing shouldn't be an issue. I was like, what if they're so magnetic? They're messing with the panels, the electronic panels, and that's what's causing it. Think about that. And it's like, but then we reverted to the stick on the side of the plane, and I get to see them in the window. You know, the face in the window, going, "Hey!"
Crazy stuff. But you know, like at some point, you have to use the insanity of how crazy things are to be able to show just how ridiculous things get to, right? So
yeah, but I mean, it was a good laugh. I've had 2 now because I tell my stupid story of what happened in the airport, and honestly, I was like, I forgot. You know what? I couldn't stop laughing because I remembered, like, we're these like 40-year-old women, total professionals, right, in the airport, traveling on business, and this happens, and she starts laughing because I was laughing so hard. She didn't know what the hell was going on.
Contagious.
We're looking at each other, and I'm like, we're acting like 10-year-old boys. right? That a fart is like so funny. And that's what kept me going, because it's like, we're acting like 10-year-old boys. We're supposed to be mature, professional women. We do an important job. People respect us. And this is what we're going to come down to. Shit.
Well, the good thing is COVID gets rid of your smell if you've got it, so you don't smell sticky things. So, hey, there's maybe a blessing in that.
Hey, it was a one-time thing. Not that, well, no, I don't think it's ever been that bad before. It was like the most horrid thing I've ever done. Yes, life is ludicrous, and we got to find the humor in the stupid.
Yeah.
We got to find
the
humor.
story.
It's otherwise we'll go nuts. You go
and the
nuts.
Beauty and the trust in ourselves and being able to go out and be one with nature and know when we need to be outside, know when we need to hug a tree, know when we need just to dance or shake it off. And there's so many things that we're going to start coming back to. You're on the right track again when the sun keeps shining, right? Just comes in when we're talking. But understand we've got this, and it's going to hurt. And it's okay that it hurts, because nobody says we're meant to go through life without feeling pain. But we're not going to let it debilitate us. Is the difference this time.
We're going to learn how to work through it and
as we move
get
forward.
to the other side. And every time, and I think I mentioned this before, every time you do, you actually gain again a little bit higher vibration, because we're lightening our load of crap that's holding us down, and we get to elevate a little bit more. And nature is important, because we want to start to be able to vibrate at that level of nature. It's actually one of the things Alex Collier said, and I'm like, no wonder I keep getting drawn to like being in my yard and on the grass and against my tree and looking at my plants. And I've never been this much into nature as I have been this year. It's just, it's calling to me. You
know what? I spent all weekends and summers in nature up in cottage country and on the Canadian Shield, and I'd walk barefoot on the quartz, and I'd sit by the water, and we'd have picnics on the island, and we would jump into the one waterfall where you could, if you went in down far enough, you could get in the bubbles, but not be the current that sucked you under, and you'd float out, and you'd feel like, if I was in a bottle of champagne or a glass of champagne right now, this is what it would feel like. But I was fortunate enough that I understand the frequency. This is before the towers all came in and things like that, but I could understand and feel the frequency. So you know what it's won by spending an incredible amount of time in nature. You know what it's won to be totally in nature. I remember the people telling me, Sandy, put a sun hat on. Sandy, put sunscreen on. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. You're going to be wrinkly when you're old and blah, 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 right? And I'm like, I'm just doing my thing. And what a difference to be able just to stand there on a rock and connect with the shield and connect with Mother Earth, because as Mother Earth frequencies are coming up, I know somebody's mentioned here that we all know that they're increasing, but she's increasing her energy. We stay centered and feel and feed her our love, our support, as we connect with, tell us what is true with all the new energies coming in. And we really establish our vertical channel. So if people get a chance this summer to go out and get somewhere where you can be 100% in nature, where there's no hydro around you, where I walk, the few places I walk, there's no hydro right in the immediate vicinity. I don't take my phone with me. I just go out and be one. Sometimes you can sit on the top of a meadow and look over a landscape. Feel, what does this feel like to be one with nature? And exactly what Alex Collier is saying, maybe you can't go up in a mountain and pack some food and sit there for a week with your dog. Maybe it's not your style either, right? But it doesn't matter. But do what you need to do. But connect with our organic self. That's the biggie.
And as much as you can, especially since it's summer now in the Northern Hemisphere, get out without your shoes on.
Yeah.
I have to wash my feet usually before I go to bed every night, because I'm always running around in my backyard without shoes on all day. I don't even bother. Just walk out, and I only put them on when I take the dog for a walk in the neighborhood. But in my yard, why?
Wherever you can get it, right?
Wherever you can get it, and you can put my toes in the grass. Feels good.
And trust that things are happening. Jay Ross is saying that they've had 2 days of military jets flying over. I've heard a few people tell me the same thing. I'm not sure where Jay Ross lives. People in Colorado are saying this. Trust that things are happening.
Kansas City, Kansas.
What's that?
Kansas City, Kansas is where it's from.
So trust that things are happening, but we raise ourselves and don't get caught as fodder for the darkness by not being able to command our emotions. So this is all part of it, right? But
yeah,
I can.
The vibrations of woo. You're right. We're wooing it up.
We totally right. So this is so important that we're talking about this, but we do need to get going, if that's okay. We've had a great chat today. We love all the input, everybody's comments and sharing. I'm going to say we are in this together, even if the darkness can't figure it out, but we're in this together, whether we kick your ass or however this is going to end. But it's the behavior that we're focusing on. We are not tolerating darkness anymore. We're not tolerating. If you don't have the integrity to do the right thing, get out. Because we're starting to see what integrity looks like, so we won't get duped going forward, so we won't feel the betrayal, because we'll see the intentions before we decide to snuggle in with different politicians or different people who say they're expert or they're going to save us.
And that comes down to trusting yourself first. And as we trust ourselves, then we know that your bullshit detector, like somebody said earlier, gets on high alert.
Ding, 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 ding. It's going to go off like the backing up of a truck, right?
Because everything comes down to knowing yourself. And when you know yourself, you can trust yourself.
Totally.
You are not that big, dark, ugly thing that whoever told you that's what you were. Nope. That's what we got to fish out all that bullshit programming and come back to the beauty of who we are. And then
look out.
Yeah. Change the world.
There you go. And that was your change card, right?
Yes. That makes me think of the Wheel of Fortune. We flip it around. We're turning the tide, right? That's where we're at.
So, okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Do you want to say anything? I think we're. Any last word?
No, I think we did had a fantastic conversation. We all shared great information. Understand that we're going to be scared going forward at different times, but we're going to be observant and watch what's going on. And by all means, if we're all going through things and we're freaked out, reach out to somebody, whether you're making friends here in the chat or you want to reach out to one of us if it's overwhelming. And they're going to try to lie to us a lot going forward in the next little while, but we've got this. That's all just what we're saying, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they're losing control of the narrative. I got that a week or two ago, and you're actually seeing it crumble. And that's why they're scrambling to, they're up in the ante and making themselves look even more ridiculous.
So we're not buying in. So keep the faith. Stay true to yourself. Be well. Love
y'all.
Take care.